I'm in Fife, on the east coast of Scotland. I'm here to see what could be the first examples of art made by a fascinating ancient civilization.
Can you just see shapes emerging? And the more you look, the more you see.
We know very little about the people that created these symbols or about what they could mean.
We're getting the idea that this is probably where it all starts, and a lot of this stuff appears to be very early.
Now, as archaeologists attempt to unravel the mystery of the carvings,
It's a fantastical creature.
they are at risk of being lost forever.
These caves are just gradually deteriorating.
We don't want these carvings to be lost on our watch.
The Wemyss Caves are located on the north shore of the Firth of Forth. The caves contain more than 50 Iron Age symbols carved into the rock. Archaeologists Joanna Hambley and Tom Dawson showed me around and explained the significance of the carvings and of the people who made them.
The Wemyss Caves are incredibly important because they contain the largest number of Pictish symbols carved in one place in Scotland and therefore anywhere in the world. Traditional thinking about the chronology are that they date from the 7th to the 8th centuries, so that's 600s and 700s AD. The evidence we have at Wemyss suggests they could have been carved in the 300s or the early 400s. We're in the Anglo-Saxon period. That's the time that the Picts occupy.
And we know that a lot of the later carvings incorporate Christian symbols, but these ones don't. And so it could be that these are the beginnings of Pictish art.
Here we have one of the most well-known carvings in the Wemyss Caves, and this is probably a horse. It's really, really rare to find something like this in a cave. It's very Pictish in its style because it's just so elegant and free-flowing. They're an Iron Age peoples in Scotland, and their Pictish territory was from here right up to Shetland. We know very, very little about them. In fact, we know hardly anything about them.
We're on the Firth of Forth, and we're looking straight across the water, and on the other side they were the non-Picts. And so these caves may be important because the people were putting the symbols there, perhaps sending a message out to their foes or their enemies on the other side of the water.
Until we find the Rosetta Stone where you've got the Pictish symbols and then a bit of Latin saying the same thing, we just have no idea exactly, specifically what they were saying.
Unlocking the meaning of the carvings has been made all the more difficult because the Picts did not write down their own history, and other descriptions of them from the period have proven to be less than reliable.
All of the archaeological evidence is that the Romans were paying the local Pictish kings a lot of silver just to leave them alone.
The Romans didn't want to advertise the fact that they weren't being successful, so everything they wrote was always about how they had won battles. It was propaganda, it was fake news.
Even today in Scotland, people are quite proud about the fact that the Picts effectively kept the Romans out. The carvings are always on the brightly lit wall, always. The Picts were quite capable of lighting up a dark space with a lamp, but they chose to carve on the walls that get the sunlight most of the day. What that tells us maybe about what the Picts were doing here at that time is people were visiting the caves, and viewing the carvings, or maybe participating in the carving of the symbols. We don't know, but it's a social thing, which almost certainly a religious thing, but it's also about people.
Jonathan's Cave has a very rare carving of a boat.
Yeah.
A boat?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a spoiler.
Yeah.
Usually, if we're talking about these caves being churches, this is our church, I'm sure. And if I shine my torch up, can you see in that flat piece of rock, here's one end of it, all the way along, and there's the other end of it, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 oars, and then a steering oar at the back here. We could well be looking at the earliest depiction of a boat in Scotland here. You could almost imagine it coming off the wall and sailing out of the cave mouth. Yeah.
Of the 5 caves that were known to contain carvings, only 3 remain today. These last few caves are also at risk of being lost due to a variety of factors.
We're in quite a developed part of Scotland, so there are houses and roads and infrastructure all around the coast, and that means that sediments that before would have been just flowing through rivers or being eroded from beaches and going out into the sea, they've been cut off. So if you take the sediment out of the system and lock it up on the land, you end up with quite severe erosion in some places, and that's what's happening at Wemyss.
Erosion happens in events. It's more likely to happen in a storm. So you might lose a metre after one storm, and if you have 5 storms in a year, then that's a lot of land. And now the sea is getting ever closer to the caves themselves.
An old car was pushed into this cave here and set alight, and you can still see the blackened roof of the cave now. Lovely carvings, some of the best Pictish beasts we had in these caves, and they were totally lost in a moment.
The Picts are not the only people to have left their mark on the cave walls. Holy men and hermits, then Victorian tourists and even local miners, all spent time here, and many recorded their visits in the stone.
The Victorians visited these caves a lot, as you can see. Yeah. And I'm just looking for Oswald. He crops up on a number of occasions. There he is.
Oh, wow.
E. Oswald, M. Oswald, and W. We love this graffiti, sort of just as much, really.
Yes, the Pictish carving.
Yeah.
With the caves being so accessible, it is not surprising that some modern visitors also choose to mark the walls. But they often don't realize just how important the marks are underneath that they're removing in the process.
Graffiti is graffiti. It's people leaving their names and their I was here. Its intention isn't to damage or destroy. So if someone comes along and like gouges out a carving or just, that's a damaging act. And this is not a damaging act. This is an act of recording.
We're sure that a lot of the damage is inadvertent, and it's just people don't realise what's there. So if we can let people know what's there, they're more likely to protect it.
Yeah.
A small army of local volunteers has been working hard to protect the caves and to raise awareness of the importance of the carvings that they house. New recording methods have been used to allow the public to virtually explore the caves and the symbols.
We've done laser scans, so we know exactly what the caves look like now, their condition, and what the entire coastline here looks like. So we can come back in the future and see how much has disappeared. We've also made these virtual models where you can move your mouse around on your computer, and it's as if you've got a torch and you're shining your torch around.
The 50 or so remaining carvings have survived for some 1,600 years. Joanna and Tom accept that certain factors that could one day destroy the ancient artworks cannot be held off forever. But through careful documentation and by encouraging local people to take ownership of their heritage, these symbols have a fighting chance.
It's very democratic heritage. You don't have to pay an entrance fee. It's not super managed, so that you get a sense of discovery here, that you find out these amazing things, and that's something we'll try and preserve as far as we can.